Dawn broke over Bangkok, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold that seemed brighter somehow, as if the world itself celebrated the breaking of the ancient curse. In the temple ruins, Meli knelt among scattered jade fragments, her form no longer shifting, but settled into something both beautiful and terrible, her true self, aged by centuries, but finally, irrevocably her own. "I don't understand," she whispered, touching her aged face. "Why didn't the curse simply break? Why am I still here?" Sarah, restored to her own appearance, stood beside Prince Rama as he answered, "Because you were never meant to disappear, Meli. The curse twisted you, but it didn't erase you. You deserve to exist as yourself, not as a vessel for endless souls." The prince had changed too. The arrogant royal mask had cracked, revealing a man humbled by the weight of his family's sins. In the weeks that followed, he did something unprecedented. He told the truth. The palace opened its archives, allowing Sarah to document the full history of the curse. She worked with a team of historians, her grandmother's research playing a crucial role in understanding the dark magic that had bound so many lives to the royal line. The museum created a special exhibition displaying the remnants of the jade pendant alongside portraits of every woman who had been trapped within Meli. "Your grandmother would be proud," Meli told Sarah one evening as they stood before the exhibition. The former concubine had become a living witness to history, her centuries of memories helping Thailand confront its past. Her beauty had faded, but her eyes held a different kind of power now, the strength of someone finally free to be herself. The prince took unprecedented steps to modernize royal traditions. The concubine system was officially abolished, and a foundation was established to support research into Thailand's supernatural history. But more importantly, he worked to make amends, personally meeting with the families of women who had been lost to the curse over generations. Sarah's research gained worldwide recognition, though few believed the supernatural elements of her papers. That suited her fine. Some truths were better honored than proven. She kept one small jade fragment, not as a charm, but as a reminder that the greatest curses were often those of tradition and silence, and the greatest magic was the courage to break them. On the anniversary of the curse's breaking, Sarah stood with the prince and Meli at the temple, watching the sun set over Bangkok. The city had changed, or perhaps they had changed, seeing it now through eyes no longer bound by centuries of dark magic. "Do you regret trying to kill me?" Sarah asked the prince with a small smile. He looked at the city his ancestors had ruled through supernatural manipulation and fear. "I regret not learning sooner that the real power of the royal line shouldn't come from curses or control, but from the courage to face our wrongs and make them right." Meli, her aged hand steady on her walking stick, nodded in agreement. "Some curses can only be broken by choice," she said. "And some choices can break even the oldest of curses." Sarah Chan's hands trembled as she lifted the ancient Siamese dagger from its silk wrapping, the metal catching the late afternoon sunlight streaming through her office window. Her breath caught in her throat. This was undoubtedly the same weapon stolen from the museum's high-security vault just last week. The curved blade still bore the distinctive royal insignia that she had meticulously documented in her research notes. Next to the dagger lay a cream-colored envelope, the royal seal pressed into deep red wax. The invitation inside, written in elegant Thai script with English translation, requested, "No, commanded, her presence at tomorrow night's royal gala." It was signed by Prince Rama Vajiralongkorn himself. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah muttered, pushing her wire-rimmed glasses up her nose. As a visiting American Chinese archaeologist specializing in ancient Siamese artifacts, she should have been thrilled by such an invitation. Instead, her scholarly instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. The museum break-in had left one security guard dead, his body arranged with unnervingly ceremonial precision. The Thai police had quickly declared it a tragic robbery gone wrong, but Sarah had noticed something they hadn't. The thief had ignored priceless gold artifacts to steal only this ceremonial dagger. Now here it was on her desk, like a deadly puzzle piece falling into place. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. A text from Dr. Suthep, her research supervisor. "Did you receive the prince's invitation? This is a great honor. You must accept." Sarah's fingers hovered over the phone's keyboard. Dr. Suthep didn't know about her private theory regarding the dagger's significance, that it might be linked to ancient royal succession rites she'd discovered in encrypted temple texts, texts that hinted at dark magic and blood sacrifices. Before she could reply, another message appeared. The prince's concubine, Khan Mali, specifically requested your presence. She's quite interested in your research. Sarah's heart raced. Everyone in Bangkok knew about Khan Mali, the prince's favored concubine. Local media obsessed over her ethereal beauty and mysterious background. No one knew where she'd come from. She'd simply appeared at court one day, quickly becoming the prince's most trusted companion. And now she was interested in Sarah's research. With trembling fingers, Sarah picked up the invitation again. The paper felt unusually warm to the touch, and for a moment, she could have sworn the ink shifted like living shadows across the page. She blinked, and it was normal again. Declining wasn't really an option, not with the stolen dagger on her desk and a dead security guard in the morgue. This invitation was both a command and a threat, wrapped in royal silk and sealed with wax. I would be honored to attend, she typed back to Dr. Suthep, even as her instincts screamed at her to run. Sarah awakened to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the scent of orchids. The private room screamed luxury, silk curtains, teakwood panels, and a view of Bangkok's glittering skyline. But the jade bracelet locked around her wrist revealed the truth. This was just another prison. The transformation has begun. Melly's voice came from the corner. She sat in shadow, but something was different. Her perfect features seemed to shift like smoke, revealing glimpses of other faces beneath. Dozens of women, all trapped within her form. Your body is fighting it, but soon. Sarah tried to speak, but her throat felt raw from the gas. On the bedside table, a news tablet displayed headlines that made her blood run cold. American archaeologist attempts theft of royal artifacts. Mental breakdown suspected, alongside her photo, which looked subtly altered, her features already showing traces of Mali's ethereal beauty. Why me? Sarah managed to whisper. Of all the women you could have chosen. Mali moved into the light, and Sarah gasped. The perfect beauty was gone. The woman before her looked ancient, worn, her true face revealed at last. Because you found the truth in those temple texts, about how the curse can be broken. She touched the jade pendant at her throat. This was the queen's final act of vengeance against her husband's infidelity. She cursed me, his favorite concubine, to serve his line forever. Each time I grew old, I had to transfer my soul into a new body, chosen for its resemblance to my original form. Sarah's hand flew to her face, feeling unfamiliar contours beneath her fingers. The gas chamber was the first step. The prince doesn't just want another concubine, he needs one. The curse demands it. Mali's ancient hands trembled. But your grandmother, when she worked in the palace, she discovered the queen's personal journals. She stole the original pendant, the one that could break the curse if used correctly. The hospital room's shadows deepened unnaturally, and Sarah saw faces in them. The trapped souls of all the women Mali had absorbed over centuries. Their silent screams pressed against the windows like dark moths. I thought I could break free. Mali's voice cracked. But I learned too late. The curse can only be transferred, never broken. The prince knows this. He's not trying to kill you, Sarah. He's ensuring his dynasty's future. She touched Sarah's jade bracelet. Once the transformation is complete, I'll fade, and you'll take my place. Your soul will absorb mine, along with every woman I've ever been. You'll serve the royal line, gathering more souls through centuries to come. Outside, temple bells began to toll, and Sarah watched in horror as her reflection in the window showed her face shifting between her own and Mali's with each resonant sound. Sarah knew something was wrong the moment she stepped off the elevator to her office floor. The usually bustling hallway was eerily silent, and the air felt thick with an unnatural stillness. Her keycard trembled against the door lock as she swiped it, the quiet beep seeming to echo through the empty corridor. The devastation inside made her gasp. Papers littered the floor like fallen leaves, her carefully organized research scattered in chaos. But it wasn't the mess that made her blood run cold. It was the precision of it. Every drawer had been methodically searched, every file examined. This was no random break-in. Her grandmother's jade pendant, which had hung by her desk window for good luck, was gone. The delicate green stone had been passed down through generations, its age-smooth surface bearing characters so ancient even Sarah struggled to decipher them. Mally had admired it at the gala last night, her fingers hovering over it with an intensity that should have warned Sarah. Beautiful pieces always find their way home, Mally had whispered, her voice carrying a weight Sarah hadn't understood then. Thunder cracked outside, making Sarah jump. Bangkok's night sky had turned an impossible shade of purple-black, the approaching storm casting strange shadows across her destroyed office. As she bent to gather her scattered papers, a drop of water hit her hand, then another. She looked up to find her ceiling perfectly dry. The drops were falling from her jade pendant, now dangling from Mally's elegant fingers as she stood in the doorway. The concubine's silk dress clung to her body, soaked through despite there being no rain outside. Water pooled at her feet, spreading across the floor in patterns that looked disconcertingly like ancient script. "I had to know if it was real," Mally said, her usually melodic voice rough with emotion. "Your grandmother, she was the maid who disappeared from the palace in 1965, wasn't she? The one who stole a royal treasure." Sarah straightened slowly, her eyes fixed on the pendant. The green stone seemed to pulse with an inner light, matching the rhythm of Mally's trembling hands. "My grandmother never told me where it came from. She only said to keep it safe. She stole it to protect herself, to break free." Mally stepped forward, water continuing to drip from her dress, the puddles at her feet now definitely forming Thai characters. "Each of us wears one, the prince's favored women. They bind us to him, to the royal line. But yours is the queen's original, the source of the curse." A shadow moved past the office window, impossible, given they were 15 floors up. Mally's eyes widened in fear. "They're watching. The prince's guards never sleep, never stop. I needed to know if you were truly her granddaughter before I—" She choked on the words as more shadows gathered outside, pressing against the glass like living ink. The police escort's lights painted the pre-dawn streets in alternating red and blue. Sarah sat in the back of the deportation van, her hands cuffed, watching Bangkok blur past. Her reflection in the window shocked her. Half her features were now Mally's, shifting like water with each passing streetlight. The lead officer's radio crackled. "Checkpoint ahead for deportation case 247. The transmission cut off as something massive slammed into the van's side. Sarah's world turned upside down as the vehicle flipped. Through shattered glass, she glimpsed black-clad figures emerging from an unmarked SUV. The police reached for their weapons, but these weren't ordinary attackers. Their movements were too fluid, too precise, and their eyes glowed jade green in the darkness. "Mally's servants," Sarah whispered, remembering the concubine's words about loyal souls bound to her through centuries. The handcuffs fell away at their touch, her jade bracelet resonating with their presence. "This way, quickly," one of them urged, their voice carrying echoes of ancient Siamese. "The prince has eyes everywhere." They weren't exaggerating. Every CCTV camera swiveled to track their movement. Streetlights flickered in patterns that spelled out Thai warnings in electric Morse code. Even the stray dogs stopped to watch them pass, their eyes reflecting an unnatural green glow. Sarah clutched the stolen jade pendant as they ran through back alleys. The stone burned against her palm, and suddenly she understood. The pendant my grandmother took, it wasn't just similar to the cursed jewels. It was the queen's original. Her rescuer nodded grimly. The source of all binding magic. Mally didn't just want to break her curse. She wanted to transfer all her accumulated souls into you, then use the queen's pendant to bind them permanently. The ultimate revenge against the royal line. They ducked into a temple doorway as a police helicopter swept overhead. Sarah's face reflected in a puddle showed the transformation accelerating, her features now almost entirely Mally's. But in the pendant's green glow, she saw something else. Her grandmother's face among the trapped souls in Mally's collection. She didn't just steal the pendant, Sarah realized, her voice trembling. She tried to break the curse herself, but Mali caught her, absorbed her, just like all the others. A deep gong resonated through the city. The prince's voice echoed from every speaker, every radio, every phone in Bangkok. To the one who carries my concubine's changing face, there is nowhere in my kingdom you can hide. Every shadow is my eyes, every whisper my ears. Every heart that beats in this city beats for its prince. As if in response, Sarah felt Mali's collected souls stirring within her transforming flesh, centuries of trapped women crying out for either escape or vengeance. She couldn't tell which was louder. Ancient stone walls rose around them as Sarah and Mali's servants sought refuge in the ruins of Wat Mahathat. Moonlight filtered through crumbling towers, casting shadows that danced like ancient spirits across weathered Buddha statues. The jade pendant pulsed stronger here, resonating with centuries of sacred power. The lunar eclipse begins in minutes. Mali's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. She stepped from behind a fallen pillar, but she wasn't alone. Her form rippled like disturbed water, revealing glimpses of hundreds of women trapped within, including Sarah's grandmother, her face pressed against Mali's skin like a drowning woman against ice. The servants who had rescued Sarah dropped to their knees, their jade-green eyes dimming. Mali laughed, the sound fracturing into a chorus of captured souls. Did you think they served you? Every piece has been placed perfectly, little archaeologist. Your grandmother's pendant, your research into curse breaking, even the prince's murderous jealousy, all orchestrated across decades. Sarah touched her face, now a perfect mirror of Mali's original beauty. You never wanted to break the curse at all. Break it? No, I want to perfect it. Mali raised her hands, and green fire erupted in a circle around them. The ancient temple stones began to weep water, forming Thai characters that spiraled around their feet. The curse's power grows with every soul I collect. But the vessel, this form, it's deteriorating. I need a new body, young and strong, already shaped to match my original face. The truth hit Sarah like physical pain. You chose me because I look like you. The transformation spell wasn't the prince's idea. It was mine. But the curse has rules. The transfer requires royal blood to be spilled in anger. Mali's smile contained centuries of cruelty. The prince's attempts on your life weren't just convenient. They were necessary. His violence sanctifies the ritual. Around them, Prince Rama's men emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the temple's every exit. But they weren't there to save Sarah. Their jade-tinted eyes revealed the truth. They were there to ensure the ritual's completion. My grandmother, Sarah's voice shook. Did she discover your plan? She was clever, like you. She stole the queen's pendant, thinking it could break the curse. Instead, she became another soul in my collection. Mei withdrew the cursed dagger, the one that had started everything in the museum. But her sacrifice wasn't wasted. She led me to you, the perfect vessel, prepared over generations for this moment. The eclipse began, darkness sweeping across the moon. The jade pendant blazed with green fire as Mali advanced, the dagger raising, centuries of trapped souls screaming in anticipation of their newest sister about to join their eternal prison. The restricted archives beneath the grand palace smelled of time itself, musty centuries compressed into narrow corridors lined with teak cabinets. Sarah's museum credentials had gotten them past the initial security, but Mali's presence made the guards bow deeply, averting their eyes as if afraid to look directly at her. They know what I am, Mali whispered, her feet still leaving wet prints despite her dress appearing dry. Even if they don't understand it, they feel it, the wrongness. Sarah's flashlight beam caught something that made her pause, a massive painting depicting a royal ceremony from the 1800s. But it was the woman standing beside the king that drew her attention. Mali, she looks exactly like me? Mali's laugh was hollow. Keep looking. You'll find more. They did. In every era, in yellowing photographs and age-darkened paintings, the same face appeared. Different clothes, different names, but always the same haunting beauty beside different kings. Sarah's hands shook as she photographed each image with her phone, the flash illuminating decades of the same woman who never aged. The final door required Mali's royal seal, and Sarah's archaeological authorization combined. It groaned open to reveal a circular chamber, its walls covered in floor-to-ceiling portraits of royal concubines. Each woman wore a jade pendant identical to the one Melly had stolen from Sarah's office. "Now you understand," Melly said, moving to touch one of the portraits, her own face staring back through centuries of paint. "I was the first. The Queen's curse bound me to serve her husband's line forever. Each new king, each new face I wear, but always the same soul trapped beneath." Sarah stepped closer to examine the pendant in the 1889 portrait when a metallic taste filled her mouth. Her vision blurred slightly. "Do you smell that? Like copper?" Melly's eyes widened in horror. "Gas! The prince! He must have." She spun toward the door, but it had sealed silently behind them. Green vapor began seeping through ornate ventilation grills, forming shakes that looked disturbingly like writhing bodies. Sarah's phone clattered to the floor as her fingers went numb. Through increasingly unfocused eyes, she saw Melly pulling at her jade pendant, the stone glowing brighter as more gas filled the room. "I'm sorry." Melly's voice seemed to come from far away. "I thought we'd have more time. The prince, he doesn't just want to kill you. He wants to make you like me. The gas, it's part of the ritual. Your soul, your face, added to my collection, an eternal prison of jade and duty." Sarah's legs gave way as the gas thickened. The last thing she saw before consciousness faded was her own reflection in the polished floor, her features already beginning to shift, becoming more like Melly's with each passing second. The eclipse shadow crept across the moon as Melly raised the cursed dagger. In that moment, Prince Rama burst through the temple doors, his expensive suit torn, his perfectly maintained appearance in disarray. He froze at the sight before him, Melly's form shifting between hundreds of faces, each one a woman he had known, had loved, had lost. "All this time," he whispered, his voice breaking, "every concubine I thought I'd chosen, they were all you." Melly's laugh echoed with centuries of bitterness. "Generation after generation of your family, so easily deceived, so eager to believe they'd found their perfect match, never questioning why each chosen concubine looked so similar to the last." The prince's eyes darted between Melly and Sarah, understanding dawning as he saw their identical features. "The disappearances, the mysterious deaths of my father's concubines, my grandfather's." His hands clenched into fists. "You've been feeding on my family's love for centuries." "Love?" Melly spat the word. "Your ancestors' queen cursed me out of jealousy, but your family turned that curse into a weapon, each king knowing the truth, using my immortality to ensure they'd always have the perfect, edgeless consort." Her form rippled, showing faces of royal concubines through the ages. "They never loved us. We were possessions, cursed to serve forever." Sarah felt the jade pendant burning against her skin as Melly advanced with the dagger. The trapped souls within the ancient concubine reached out with ghostly hands, eager to welcome another sister into their eternal prison. But then Prince Rama did something none of his ancestors had ever done in centuries of the curse. He stepped between Melly and Sarah. "No more," he declared, his voice carrying royal authority that made the temple stones vibrate. "My family's cruelty ends with me." Melly's beautiful face contorted with rage. "You cannot stop this, little prince. The ritual requires royal blood spilled in anger. Then take mine freely given instead." The prince grabbed the dagger's blade with his bare hand. Blood dripped onto the ancient stones, but not in anger or violence. It fell as an offering, a sacrifice to end centuries of harm. The temple exploded with supernatural light. The jade pendant shattered, its fragments spinning in the air like green stars. Melly screamed as her collected souls began to tear free, the prince's willing sacrifice creating a power the curse had never encountered before. Sarah watched in awe as her features began returning to normal, the transformation reversing. Among the escaping souls, she glimpsed her grandmother's spirit smiling before dissolving into peaceful light. Centuries of trapped women poured from Melly's form, their combined voices rising in a song of freedom that shook the temple foundations.